Hey, what's up again? Great to see you in here. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is JJ Morris, and I'm the Director of Performance at S8, the largest baseball strength and performance facility in the state of Florida. It's become my mission to change the way the baseball athlete approaches strength training, and we've made tremendous waves because of everything I'm about to share with you here today. I also want to tell you that you should be proud of getting to this point, as in doing so, you've already separated yourself from about 50% of the baseball players in the market for a spot at the next level, whether that's a spot on the leading travel team, varsity squad, a scholarship to the college you're gunning for, or even a slot in the draft. I can tell you that because just based off the numbers of athletes we interact with, about 50% of the people that see the blueprints or start digging into what S8 is, keep digging to reveal what the system can truly do for their arm and their bat. And if I'm being honest, I know it's not an easy transition to go from the traditional approach to training for baseball, and more specifically the traditional and popular approaches to increasing throwing velocity or hitting power. But I can tell you with 100% confidence and evidence, nothing will make a quantum shift in how you produce velocity and power quite like mass equals gas. I know this because I've seen both sides of the coin. And as a strength coach who's worked with many populations of the past, I've seen just how behind the sport of baseball is as a whole with their approach to training. This at first was baffling to me because with the advances in metric analysis and more specifically sabermetrics, as well as what is marketed as next level sports science and training philosophies, I assumed that there would have to be some driving force behind the physical development processes for baseball players. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized there was a massive problem here, and actually quite a few of them. First and foremost, the injury rates have increased dramatically in the last 15 years from the youth to the professional level. Some people say it's due to higher speeds, stronger athletes, humans reaching their genetic limits. Others say it's because of the focus on velocity, and others just ignore it, especially the surgeons raking in the dough on fixing these injuries. Another issue is pitching and hitting gurus making money off success they had as an athlete, and sometimes not even, and making a living selling you magic sauce, the move, the snap, the twist, or whatever else they come up with. And when you lack definitive results in throwing velocity, command, hitting power, batting average, contact rate, and etc., they tell you one of a few things. You need to wait, the velocity will come. It's not about power, it's about flexibility. We're still working on insert technical jargon, and my personal favorite, you need more lessons. As I looked deeper into this phenomena, I found one major earth-shattering flaw, and it was a trend that was not just getting worse, it had permeated every level of competitive baseball, the dugouts, coaches, and parents. It's one based largely out of fear and largely out of bias for the mechanical and technical skills baseball players must display. And that is the thought process that skills and technique must come before strength and physical ability. Things like power, stability, stamina, explosiveness, optimal joint function, and intramuscular coordination. I know you're thinking, but technique is everything, and no, it's really not. So bear with me here, but look at it like this. What have you likely done your entire life as a baseball player? Worked on your swing, or worked on your delivery, your drive down the mound, or your release, or your hand placement, arm slot, where your elbows are. Do you swing down? Do you swing up? Shoulders on plane, leg drive, hip drive, throw with your lower half, on and on and on. The truth is, you've made it this far looking for the real way to train to finally increase your hitting power or throwing velocity, because let's be honest here, you need more and you're not seeing the results you want or think you should be getting doing what you've already been doing. Would you agree? Look, I know where you're at right now. I'm sure you're struggling with a lot of the things my athletes and their parents were telling me before they began using our system. Things like you're tired of waiting for the velocity to come. You're tired of taking endless lessons only to see a few marginal increases in power or contact. You're tired of spending hours on the mound throwing bullpens for different coaches who have different opinions on your mechanics. You're tired of trying to throw with your lower half only to still get nagging arm soreness and seeing little change in production. You're fed up with ebooks and courses and flashy looking tools and harnesses that string you up like a puppet. You're tired of hearing the gurus attack the swing philosophy your other coach had. You're tired of seeing kids throw gas at showcases and getting all the attention while you spend thousands of dollars on travel and fees and lessons to try and get exposure only to throw mud on the mound. You're tired of the studs dropping tanks all day, and you're over here struggling in a slump praying for a base knock. If you're a parent watching this, you're probably tired of seeing your boy go through all this, and even more frustrated at the fact that you've dropped a solid amount of money trying to get him the tools and the training and the development he needs to accomplish his dreams of playing the game at a higher level, or at least give him a real shot. Have you ever felt like this? Does it seem like I'm reading your mind? Well, that's because I know exactly what you're going through. I've literally sat down with 300 plus families in the last 2 years and heard these exact word for word statements. I'm tired of it myself. But why? Why is this the case, and why are some athletes able to produce so naturally the skills and performance they do at the plate or on the bump? Well, after researching it over the last 3 years from every paradigm and perspective, and taking a very unbiased approach to answering the question of what makes baseball players able to perform at a higher level, I realized that the answer is in physics. You see, the sport of baseball, much like every other sport, is played on the earth. Duh, you're probably saying, but really, the concepts that dictate performance as a sprinter, a jumper, a football player, a soccer player, or any other position or sport dictate baseball as well. In fact, they may dictate it more so than any other sport because you're required to transfer energy into an object to make it overcome gravity. And the fact is, for an athlete to move at higher speeds, throw objects, rotate to hit objects, transfer energy into positions and movements, and then transfer energy into objects like a ball or a bat, they must first produce enough force to be able to defeat gravity and move their bodies at the highest speed possible in the directions that matter. Think about it. Could you throw a ball 90 miles an hour if you didn't wind up and drive yourself downhill with an immense amount of force on your back leg? No. Likewise, you couldn't swing a bat and hit a home run or even a double sitting in a chair and just rotating your upper body. You couldn't lead off and steal second, accelerate to glove up a ground ball, or jump to snatch a line drive overhead if you didn't first have the strength and power required to put a massive amount of force into the earth and defeat gravity. You see, what I'm saying here is that while mechanics are important, the physical strength and power required to execute those mechanics, whatever they are, is far more crucial to performance than the style of mechanics themselves. You can teach a strong, powerful, healthy athlete with mobility and supreme joint function how to throw or swing virtually effortlessly because his body is primed to move with the high efficiency, and his body produces optimal leverage and is receptive to learning new motor patterns or skills. This is why often third basemen and some outfielders will develop into pitchers at the collegiate level because they have the physical development necessary to produce massive amounts of force efficiently, and they are unadulterated. They're free and clear of multiple coaches with different opinions on mechanics. In essence, they're a perfect canvas to produce the pitching skills necessary to perform at the collegiate level because they have the prerequisite physical ability as well as the ability to learn how to throw with command and precision. It's a lot harder to unteach years of grooving and repetition in a specific style of pitching mechanics or swing path and then reform them correctly while increasing strength and power after the fact. It's nearly impossible to catch up physically and almost impossible to restructure them mechanically. The big takeaway here, you've got to move the body with a large amount of force and speed to transfer speed and force into a bat or a ball. You can swing a bat slowly and throw a ball at half speed with a ton of control and perfect mechanics, but what does that accomplish when the ball reaches the plate or the bat meets the ball? Nothing. You must develop the physical strength, power, and explosion necessary to become a hard thrower or a power hitter before you spend all your time on mechanics. If it wasn't the truth, you would already be a power hitter or throwing with the velocity you want, and you wouldn't be looking for the answer because your mechanics would be carrying you. This concept and the answer to your questions and the solution to the roadblocks preventing you from becoming the highly producing pitcher or power hitter you need to be is called mass equals gas. So what is it and how does it have such a dramatic effect on baseball athletes? Well, first off, let's get down to some numbers and discuss just how dramatic these changes really are. The average pitcher using the mass equals gas system at S8 is increasing his throwing velocity by a half mile per hour for every 1 pound of skeletal muscle mass he adds. And the average guy is adding 11 pounds of skeletal muscle mass in his first 12 weeks. This is consistently equating to 4 to 7 miles per hour in increased throwing velocity off the mound, and not just top velocity, but his average. As for hitters, we're consistently seeing 3/4 of a mile an increase in exit velocity for every 1 pound of skeletal muscle mass he adds, equating to an average of 8 to 10 miles per hour in increased exit velocity measured in an off-tee wood bat scenario. In other settings, athletes are decreasing their home to first base times an average of 2.5 tenths, decreases in ERA of 100 points, 33% increases in slugging percentage, 100-point increases in batting average, taking 3 tenths off pop times, dropping 3 to 4.5 tenths off of 60-yard times. I could go on for days, but the fact is this works. It's based off the science of the force velocity curve and a little-known method of strength and performance pioneered by quite possibly the greatest strength coach of all time, Louis Simmons. He's adapted the system and used it with over 140 world record holders, national champions, Olympic champions, Super Bowl champions, and everyone in between from 45 different sports. But more specifically, it's been used with incredible success with throwing and swinging sports like the shot, javelin, hammer, and discus throwers for dozens of years in the Eastern Bloc with the most dominant throwers the world has ever seen. And while pitching and hitting isn't exactly like the Olympic throwing sports on the surface, at the deepest level, the level that dictates how we train the body to produce as a thrower or a power hitter, it's nearly identical. There's 3 major steps that make up the process we now call mass equals gas. From there, it's then broken into 8 sub-steps and components of training, which you'll see in your mass equals gas blueprint. So step number 1, develop maximal force to separate yourself from the ground. Step number 2, develop a high rate of force and accelerate to move the body at a high speed once you've broken ground. Step number 3, transfer that force into an object through our hands. Sounds easy, right? Well, now would be a great time to open up that mass equals gas blueprint so you can follow along as I break down each component within the system. Component number 1 is what we call max effort. The goal on a max effort lift is to mimic the joint positions, specifically your lower half, that you'll be performing in. So think of the bottom of the mound after you've wound up and driven yourself to land on your front foot, or after you've initiated your swing and stepped toward the pitch right before you drive your back hip forward. This is where you'll want to generate as much force as you can into the ground. We prefer movements like sumo deadlifts and box squats, which are much safer for the athletes to perform and develop the glutes, the hamstrings, and the groin far more than the traditional squats or deadlifts. You do this once a week and hit your best single each time you attempt to lift. Component number 2 is what we call dynamic effort. This accomplishes something called rate of force development. Think of it like this. If the first day in the week was to increase how much force the athlete can produce, or maximum strength, then the second day in the week is to increase how fast the athlete can go from 0 to 60, or acceleration. We accomplish this by using the same lift or type of lift we use on max effort day, lifting a specific percentage of our maximal weights as fast as we possibly can. And use intent, just like when throwing or hitting, you must use intent to deliver the power. This should be done once per week after max effort to increase what we call rate of force development, or how fast your body can put the horsepower on the road. Component number 3. Accommodating resistance is crucial to the success of our system and involves the use of specialty bands that are used for daily single joint exercises and on our dynamic effort days to force the body to increase how quickly we produce force, but also amplify the stretch shortening cycle of the muscles, or what many people call the stretch reflex. Think of this like downloading the elastic properties of the bands into your muscles, where the faster they are stretched, the more explosively they can react and produce more speed. This makes you a very fast twitch, elastic athlete. Component number 4. Specialize is something our ball players tend to do very well with understanding. It's much like selecting a specific position in your swing or in your pitching delivery and working on those specific mechanics. In much the same way, specialize is most commonly single joint exercise that allows us to highlight one specific muscle or joint, even joint angle that is weak in the athlete. For example, a large majority of our pitchers lack the strength in what is known as the long head of the triceps. This muscle is imperative to increasing velocity, accelerating at the end of the delivery, and putting what is known as life on the baseball. Specialize should be done to attack the weaknesses you see on both your max effort day and your dynamic effort day. Component number 5, bridging. This is where we essentially bridge the gap between the weight room and the ball field, taking the strength and acceleration we've now gained and transferring into sport-specific jumps that are similar to how the athlete moves on the field in his role. For pitchers and power hitters, this means lateral jumps off 1 foot, 2-foot stagger stance jumps, and other jumps where we can add med balls and launch items to simulate transfer of this newly acquired power. You should make effort to do bridge work twice per week, but be sure to manage the volume of your jumping though, as they add up quickly and can be taxing on the body. Component number 6. GPP stands for General Physical Preparedness. You could look at this like the foundation of your physical strength, conditioning, and structure. More specifically, your trunk. Your tendons and ligaments, the things that hold your body together and not only keep you injury-free, but enable you to further build strength and power on a frame that's able to support the high forces and speeds you will then create as you increase your power output. This step is possibly the most overlooked and underrated component in any training program and is one of the keys to our success. This should be done 3 to 4 times per week at a low intensity but respectable volume. Component number 7. Kinematics is one of the most misunderstood and probably complex pieces of our system. Basically, you could look at this like the function of your joints, how well they move, how much range of motion you have, and how well they can handle the force and speeds we're producing and developing with all the other components of our system. Work on your joint function or kinematics should be done daily, and at the very least every other day. We use something called regressive and progressive angular isometrics that rapidly increase the strength and activation in the joints. This gives us a huge edge in our competition because we're able to realize the athlete's full potential as their joints begin to become bulletproof. This is like hardwiring your brain directly to each joint so you have maximum control in every position your body moves through. Component number 8 is called restoration, or as we call it, regen. This is vital to being able to repeat this training process regularly and is essential to helping the body rebuild tissues and gain the strength and power and speed we've trained for in all the other components. This is comprised of manual restoration and tissue mobilization. Things like body tempering, trigger point and release, functional range conditioning to increase joint mobility and stability, and massage to move blood through the muscles to bring in new nutrients and oxygen and help restore the athlete's energy levels, mental focus, and prevent the risk of injury. This should be done once per week at a minimum, and more optimally twice per week to progress at an even faster rate. So how do I know this system works? Because I've used a system with over 300 baseball players from the Bay Area alone. Take Jacob Barnes, for example. He dropped 5% body fat, increased his lean mass by 10 pounds, and increased his sumo deadlift by 200 pounds in just one off season. As a result, he threw 5 miles an hour faster in the spring of 2018 than he did in the spring of 2017, and knocked 50 points off his ERA year over year so far. Catcher Charlie Welch, who went from being a decommitted senior to receiving a full ride to Pepperdine University in Malibu, added 100 pounds to his squat, knocking off 0.3 of a second from his pop time, increasing his batting average by 150 points, and leading his high school team to a state championship in 8 months' time. And, by the way, getting the attention of multiple organizations in the 2018 draft. Then there's John, a big hitter and a strong arm that came to us the second year at a JUCO and had to make a statement. He packed on 20 pounds, increased his deadlift by over 100 pounds, increased his throwing velocity to 91 miles per hour, up from 87, and made a standout statement at the plate and on the bump to get an offer from the University of Tampa to continue playing ball. Or there's Scott Germack, a solid pitcher with great delivery, but was overweight, couldn't leverage the mass he had, and couldn't seem to put more force into the ground and speed on the ball. In a year's period of time, we shed 40 pounds of body fat, while still increasing his max velocity by just under 10 miles an hour, as he helped lead his high school team to the first district championship in 19 years. These guys had the same problems a lot of my guys have. Lost on how to train, spending hours on technique, never really focusing on developing the strength and power required to produce high levels of power and velocity while maintaining and improving their mobility and range of motion. But once they employed this system, everything changed. So, do you see why this system is so powerful in the sport of baseball? Would you agree, if you're playing a sport that's designed around physics and transferring force and energy into objects at high speeds, that you need a system of strength and conditioning that's designed to make the body capable of this? Are you ready to stop wasting more time in the pen or in the BP, trying to fix something you've already been working on for years and start building the engine that powers those mechanics? If you said yes to any of these, then I want to make you an offer. In my best effort to provide you a roadmap for what we do and how we do it here at our headquarters in St. Pete, I've attempted to give you a crash course in what is known as the conjugate system, the most advanced and proven method of strength and performance today. But I realize the complexities of this system. And more so, I realize the demands on you as an athlete or a parent. Schedule demands, scholastic responsibilities and deadlines, travel tournaments, practice, SATs, ACTs, showcases, family functions and chores, the list goes on. That said, while you can absolutely take this video and these guidelines and completely transform how you train and how you perform in the field, it's still not the same as training with me, my team, in the atmosphere that is S8. And the bigger hurdle here, the most important step that I cannot put a template or an outline on, is the diagnostic assessment that is crucial to finding your kinetic breakdowns and what the most crucial training focus for your specific body and style mechanics is. But with a short phone call and some quality conversation about your current performance, past performance, and discussion on key indicators and body type, I can massively accelerate how quickly you can begin training correctly through a velocity or power diagnostic consult. Based on the information you give us so far and a few more critical questions and key performance indicators, I can help you develop a plan of action that will give you the starting point for your training and a roadmap to follow this system with incredible specificity to your game. Flat out, this call will help me pinpoint why you're not throwing or hitting with the power or velocity you need, and allow me to show you exactly how you can change your training to make that happen immediately. I would normally charge $250 for a call like this. I consult with over a dozen coaches from high school to the Division I level to the professional level, MLB and MILB talent, and produce the types of results I've told you about consistently with all of them. And many times, make changes to guys that result in the realization of power and velocity overnight, simply because they hadn't truly understood how to activate and develop the body to produce its optimal level of velocity. So if you're ready to apply the science of mass equals gas to your training and start developing the strength and power necessary to produce the throwing velocity or the hitting power you need to stand out and get the attention of scouts, recruiters, and coaches, click below to schedule a free power and velocity diagnostic phone consultation. Let me help you build a roadmap to hitting with elite level power and accuracy and throwing with the velocity and command that turns heads. Because haven't you waited long enough for the velocity to come? Talk to you soon.